And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. The BC Wildfire Service is internationally recognized as a leader in wildfire management and is known for its skilled and committed personnel, uncompromising safety attitude, and innovative use of technology. We begin today's Open Connection with Communications Specialist for BC Wildfire Service, Carolyn Bartos.
I think as the communications specialist, you get to kind of focus inside, so external staff, and then turn outside and putting information out to the public. So it's a little bit of a best of the both worlds, I would say. Right now, as far as the fire season, we don't have a lot of fire on the landscape, so we get to really focus on that internal communication and talk about kind of the firefighters, what they're doing when they're not fighting fires, and then also pay attention to what's going on provincially and internationally and nationally as well. So right now you're looking at the high rivers and the flooding and being able to assist in that aspect and let the public know what we're doing even though we're not fighting fires is quite important, but also to keep the internal staff up to date and informed as well. So it's a little bit of back and forth, which makes it quite intriguing. I do get out. It's important for me to mingle and to know the crew, and it's important for them to know who's their communication specialist and working in the office as well, because our area covers about a quarter of the province. So just in regards to the vast space, it is hard to stay connected, and especially during COVID as well. So how do you do that with COVID and not being able to be on the road is one thing we've had to, mitigate and work around, and we've compromised with being on virtual meetings and what have you. But as far as just keeping the communication line open, it's always a priority, and it still is, whether you're in person or you're doing it over the computer. So we just have to maintain those lines of communication and make sure everyone's on the same page. And so it's a main focus for me, is just keeping everyone informed and knowing who each other is. There's lots of opportunity. It depends on how much activity, I will say, is happening as far as wildfires that is happening on the landscape. So sometimes I'm bound more to making sure the information is on the proper platforms. So if I am more bound to being on getting stuff out to the public and writing news releases, then I'm more tied to the desk. But when the opportunity exists that I get out, then I jump at it as much as I can. So being here today and promoting it and promoting the firefighters, I think is always and will be one of the most important parts of this position. Not expected is when I get to locations and I end up having to fly to get pictures and and not that I'm queasy, but it is always one of those things where I'm not really expecting it when I'm driving out to locations, and then it's there and it's kind of spur of the moment. But it's one of the fun kind of perks of just getting to be on location and getting to see what everyone does, and that in order for that to happen, you have to be where they are. And especially up in the Cassiar, where the land is so vast, and getting to where the guys and the girls are working, those flights are the part of the parcel, I guess. I think I was pretty lucky to kind of nail such an exciting job at a time in my life where I was kind of moving to a more remote area. So to feel, disappointed, it's a tough question. I don't really have an answer. I would say sometimes, like, the only thing, and it's not even frustrating, I think it just becomes a little bit more difficult, is as you start ramping up in activity, there becomes just a moment of how much can you juggle, and it's decisions that you have to make as they're presented, I would say. But it's not something I dislike. I just something that you have to deal with, and we do. To be honest, I think right now, as we came out of the grass season and those backyard burning, and we're waiting for green up to happen, the expectation of having fires start from the public is expected. But I think one of the main messages just to share is that human-caused fires are preventable, and all action that can be taken to prevent that from happening should be taken. And it also saves our resources for the wildfires and the fires that are naturally caused.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The 2018 wildfire season was unique in its impact to almost all regions of the province. Weather was a key driver of the activity, since late July brought record-breaking temperatures and severe lightning storms to many areas. By August, a provincial declaration state of emergency was declared. Let us return to the archives as Carolyn reflects about the 2018 wildfire season.
Well, I would say that we did come out of a big season in 2018. So I think the messaging and what people can do is being looked at, researched, and people are really starting to take that initiative to fire smart their own property, to look at their communities and their houses, and just kind of start with the little things of just taking the small dry leaves away from their steps, clearing their gutters, moving their wood away from their house, all those small things that just take a little bit of time, not a lot of money, and you can really just focus on yourself before focusing out to your neighbors, and then have that conversation with your next door neighbors or your community, and really take care of yourself first. I would promote it. I would honestly say there's so many benefits, friendships to be made, just the amount of just different skills that you get to kind of acquire and apply for communications, for interactions, being out here, learning just a different aspect of kind of a point of view of jobs that you hear about in the news. So yep, I would recommend it for sure. One thing I would just say is these firefighters here that we're looking at today, they're part of the community. You know, you don't have to shy away. If you see them out, if you recognize anyone, you can encourage and promote. You can share your well wishes, be it via our public website, which is wildfire.ca, or just take a moment just to kind of thank them for their hard work. They're dedicated and they're focused, and they're here all summer. They put their time in, and you know, they're here to protect, and they really enjoy what they do. I start kind of on the local, provincial level from your question. I absolutely have and maintain a relationship with the other comms specialists that are situated in one of the other fire centers. So we have 6 fire centers throughout the province. So there's 6 comms specialists, but also there's the communication assistants that reside in the Northwest Fire Centre, but also throughout the province as well. So we're always in constant communication as far as what fire is on the landscape, what's needed, what kind of communications is putting out, how we can assist each other. So things like our provincial wildfire newsletter will go out to our stakeholders and partners, and we make sure that all that communication is produced by ourselves and also consistent as far as what's going out. So it's very, very similar. Some of it is the same. If we are putting out information bulletins or news releases, you know, we're always linking in with each other to kind of see if someone else needs one, if we're going to do a double publication or a provincial release. So those conversations are happening all the time. As far as communicating with other provinces, even up in the Yukon, that relationship is established. We have communication. As they kind of change, it's good to know if they have another comms person that does come in. So early in the season, you're kind of looking over and double checking who's sitting where, making those phone calls to kind of make sure that if you do need to have a conversation, you know who to phone. Sometimes it's a different person behind the number, and it's good to establish that relationship prior to the wildfire season, which we make a point of doing. But we don't report on other jurisdictions' fires. So, for example, we did have an IA crew that was part of the provincial uplift that went out to Manitoba to help with the fires in that province. And we're not speaking on behalf of Manitoba, even though we'll say that we are there to help with firefighting efforts, but it's up to the public then to go to their website just to get those particulars. And it's the same when you're crossing into those international borders as well. Just like a wildfire, like they're not going to stop at the border, and neither does our lines of communication. Everything kind of is shared. You're picking up the phone, you're sharing who's going to be doing what. I mean, the crews and where they're positioned will be very specific, and we can report out on that information and share that information, but also what the expectation or what's happening in another area is also part of the story. It's part of the wildfire story, and that's what we're here to tell and to share. And if we're part of that, if we're assisting, if we're adding suppression efforts, or any personnel on the fire, then we're part of the story, and it's worth telling that our story as far as our involvement is. As far as where that relationship lies, it might not lie with the communications specialist or the communications section per se. So depending on what level or what type of communication is happening, if it's more prevention, then supervisors and managers might be having those one-on-one conversations with different representatives from different ministries. But when I am putting information out, they are receiving it. So as far as like highways, for example, if we're coming up to prohibitions or fire bans being put in place, I'm definitely going to be linking in with them to get our messaging put up on the highway crossboards so the public sees it. And so in order for that to happen, we're going to be having communications behind the scenes. So yes, making sure those relationships are established no matter what. Once it happens we can maintain it, and it's there.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The BC Wildfire Service employs approximately 1,000 wildfire fighters each year. In order to become a wildfire fighter with the BC Wildfire Service, applicants must show motivation, have a relevant skill set, and complete 2 fitness tests and attend the BC Wildfire Service New Recruit Boot Camp. Let us return to the conversation with Jared Stevens.
So we're out here at Shames Mountain and we're doing some cutting. We're doing a parking lot expansion here for the Shames Mountain Co-op. Every year we have a requirement for training. And a big part of our job is chainsaw training. So we require every year to be cutting trees down, bucking trees. So it's training for our job. So it's nice here where we can come out and we can help out Shames Mountain by doing a project for them. But also for us, we have the training. So it's a nice symbiotic relationship there. Yeah, I've been working, I think this is my 9th season now. And what really got me involved was just knowing how much of a team atmosphere it was. It was an outdoor activity, it's a physical job, and you're really involved. So a lot of our crews are established with 20 packs or 3 packs or 10 packs, but you're always amongst a crew. And that really was a positive for me, just coming from a sports background. And I think a lot of people are attracted to this job who come from that background. So I got involved because I knew it'd be a bit more like a sports environment, a team environment. And that's initially what got me into it. I've fallen in love with firefighting ever since, and all the new aspects and the dynamic environment that firefighting brings. But originally, I would say for sure it's the team environment. You don't need any specific training. So we do recruitment every year around January. And we do have kind of a rigorous interview process as well as physical testing in order to get into firefighting. But once you're here, we do all the training in-house. We have a provincial boot camp, which every new recruit will go to. And then from there, you're just trained on the job. So what I really enjoy about the job, I love getting outdoors. I love the personal development that firefighting brings. So in order to work in a wildfire, you need to be physically fit, you need to be mentally fit, but also you need to have your interpersonal skills dialed in, because you're working with so many people in such a stressful environment that with all these external factors, you really have to bring your game up. So I just love the personal development, and with our training, we really try to concentrate on that personal development. So we can put these new firefighters in these dynamic, stressful scenarios, and in those scenarios, we know they will flourish. So a lot of the time, there's fires and environments with fires that we can put them out and we can't extinguish them. But I think we all know the power of nature, and sometimes with the environments and the indices and the wind, Mother Nature just becomes a little too powerful. So we do what we can, but sometimes we do lose some big fires, and we will lose homes and sometimes communities, and that's always tough because obviously there's mistakes that we do make, but there are just some battles that I don't think we're fit to win. Yeah, absolutely. So we're based here in Terrace, so we have 30 firefighters here, but that is quite a lot of firefighters for this environment that we're in. We're in a bit of a rain coast, nice, like right next to the coast here. So we're utilized as a provincial resource, as a national resource, and even an international resource. So in my career, I've been over to Quebec, I've been down into Washington, Alberta, and then last year we were called upon to go help in California. So it is a nice job for travel, and you definitely move around quite a bit. How we fight fire here will even be very different to how we fight it in Kamloops, like into a desert. And how we fight up in the boreal forest around Fort St. John's is going to be very different to how we do it on the coast. With the size of the trees, how it burns, how quickly it moves, it's so different. So you can have the basics of firefighting down, but really when you start firefighting a bit more, you kind of accumulate the experience needed to be able to get sent somewhere and know how the fire is going to react and how it's going to react a little differently. Definitely how the fire reacts and how the fire moves according to the slope you're on is going to change quite a bit. If you're in a valley, the wind is going to change. It might funnel up the valley, so you got to consider that as well. But also access egress, because one of the main things we have to consider is the safety of our firefighters, and that's our first priority. So if we're on a flat ground with a lot of access egress, maybe road access, it'll be a little easier for our safety plan. But if we have a fire up on the top of a mountain, now what's your egress out of there? Are you going to build a helipad? Is that what you're going to require? Do you have a long trail that you're going to have to cut that goes up the mountain? So there's a lot of things, not only just with the fire, but also the safety of the firefighters that you have to consider. No, we're changing it up, and we have a pretty good innovation program, a research program where we're trying to bring in some new things. So one of the most recent developments that have been brought in is drones. So a lot of the time before, we'd rely on helicopters, so like smaller helicopters to do recce's. So they would go and they'd check out the area and kind of give us some insight where we're getting into. But now we're starting to incorporate drones into the way we're firefighting. So we can have a guy on the ground with a drone, and he can send that drone up, and then we can get a nice aerial view of where we're working. And maybe it'll be a good water site or a good extraction site or a good site for a helipad. So we're running with the times, and yeah, we're getting better. But with wildfire, I think you need to adopt strategies that make sense, that are safe. So sometimes we'll put fires into modified response, is what we call it, because we know we can't win. And we know putting people in that scenario would cause them to be unsafe. Of course, that occurs as well with structural firefighting. But I think structural firefighting, they hit it hard, they hit it fast, and they hit it direct, and they put that fire out a lot of the time. But sometimes for us, we just have to sit back and wait. And I think maybe as structural firefighters at times, that would seem a little odd. But for us, sometimes it is the safest strategy just to let it go and do its thing. And then once it calms down, then we can attack it and get in and put the fire out. So, being able to work within the community for our training, because we do work, some of us work for 8 months of the year, but obviously there's not fires to fight with it all with that 8 months. So we have shoulder seasons kind of at the beginning and at the end, and that's where we do a lot of our training. So I just love that we can get the training we require in order to fight fires, but we can also provide a service for people like James Mountain or for Parks BC or Rec and Trails, where we can really combine our training into value for the community. But the wildlife, they're pretty smart. So when there's fires, they usually scatter pretty quick. And we also got these chainsaws running and pumps running that are pretty loud. But definitely you encounter wildlife. And really when we see it the most is on our helicopter rides. So we're flying into fires, into remote fires. We'll get some nice aerial views and see some pretty cool things. So.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Initial attack firefighters operate as a 3-person crew and usually are the first on the scene of a new wildfire. Once there, the initial attack crew works quickly to set up water pumps, remove fuel from the fire's path, and dig fire guards to control or extinguish the blaze. In this final segment of Open Connection, Ryan Rosebloom shares why he joined the BC Wildfire Service.
Yeah, this is my 8th season. I started as a junior in Terrace, so that's a program through the high school. Started on the unit crew here. I got into it. My brother was on the crew for about 4 years, so I was just, following the big brother's footsteps. And then, I just loved it. Really like the crews, the guys I've worked with. I like just being on fires. It's a ton of fun. It's a bit of an adrenaline rush the whole time. And then some training. I've gone through like faller training, so certified hand faller, and all the other crew leader training kind of thing, DTA training, danger tree assessment, that kind of stuff. Yeah, lots of just little courses and whatnot through the years. We have 2 crews up here. We're working with the initial attack crews, which we have 3 in Terrace, and then the unit crew, which is a 20-man crew. We have 1 of those crews in Terrace, so it's good getting up here. We work all together on these projects, and we don't always get to do that, so it's nice to have a project where we can all work together, and then where we can get kind of just training to work together on the fire line. We have quite a few rookies this year, and it's just good to get them out, get them working, get them running chainsaw, kind of stuff that we're going to be doing on the fire line. So it's just good to, it's really good work for the fire line when we don't have fires. I think it's just a good opportunity, and it just builds trust in the crew, just with people we don't really know. Just getting new people on, it just builds trust and what we need when we're on the fire. So, and then we usually get food supplied for us if we're on a fire camp. So on those larger fires, there'll be a catering service. They'll provide food for us and lunches, and then like shower service, like there's a shower cart. And then we're also 72 hours self-sufficient on the unit crew. So we carry 72 hours worth of food with us, usually like dehydrated food or just like cans of stag or chunky soup, which we eat on the fire, which is okay. It gets pretty old eating that kind of food, but so myself, I would take out, we have like our line packs, so that's like our pack that we're bringing out every day. Generally we're gonna have carry like small hose for when we're gonna hose, like a hosing day. And then we'll just have jewelry, which is like the pieces we put onto the hose that we're using, like nozzles and different kind of things that we need to attach the hose. And then we have our lunch. We usually have like a jacket, and then we're bringing like falling gear. So most of us will be bringing in like tools for our chainsaws, and then we'll bring in like probably 4 or 5 chainsaws for the day for the 20-person crew. And then we're loading up with whatever hose we need.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but it's a connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.